Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brittnee. It's truly the season of giving because I've been sent not one, but two really fun packages. The first one is this amazing set of holiday chocolate and cocoa butter colors from Haute. Look how pretty and festive the packaging is. I love this. These are all the colors in the holiday collection. If you're ever interested in buying colors from Haute, don't forget to use my code BrittneeK because you'll get 10% off. I'll also link their website down below. Because I've been a bit slow putting out this video, you guys might be all set for holiday colors this year. But if you're interested in trying out Haute, definitely check out their website because I'm sure they will be putting out a really cool set for Valentine's and probably for Easter and all the upcoming seasons and holidays as well. And they also have a really awesome base collection of powdered colors. The second package was sent by Makeat, and it is the Holiday Chocolate Stamp Collection designed by Andrey Dubovik. I always love Makeat's packaging that their sets come in because you can store them in these cool boxes. It's hard to see the stamp details here, but you'll get a closer look a bit later. So, in today's video, I'm going to test out everything all at once. First, I'll go over how to add the powders into cocoa butter to get a nice cocoa butter color. And then I'll show you how to use these fun holiday stamps using two different techniques. Before we get started, it's time for our subscriber highlight. Sometimes it's hard for me because I'm not sure if the username is a nickname or a real name or just a random name. So I'm just gonna read it as it's written. Scatty Dove, maybe? I recognize this person for always leaving me encouraging comments on my videos, and they've been a supporter for quite a while. I love that they mentioned that they appreciate me taking things from my life that I love and using that as an inspiration for the things that I create, because that's something that I really enjoy doing. So it's good to know that you guys enjoy it too. So thanks for being here and for supporting. All right, let's make some chocolate. For my holiday chocolates this year, I will not be using the holiday blue or brown, so they can go. I'm sure they're awesome. I just don't need them today. So here we are. I'll be using these colors this season to make bonbons today and also hot cocoa bombs later. So I'll show you all of my ratios of powder to cocoa butter for these colors. To get started, I fill up these perfect little containers all the way to the top with pure cocoa butter, which ended up weighing 76 grams each. I melt the cocoa butter for 30 seconds at a time in the microwave until it's around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. When I was filming this, I was experimenting with the percentage of powder to use for the cocoa butter, but to keep things simple for you guys, I'm going to just give you the final measurements for each color that I was satisfied with. For the gold, I ended up using 7.5%, so for 76 grams of cocoa butter, I weighed out 5.7 grams of gold powder. When you add in the powder, it really helps to first put it through a sieve. Then you stir it in. And then the final step is to blend the color and cocoa butter together using a stick blender. And I've really learned over the past couple months as I've been mixing my own colors that this step is really, really important. Don't skip it. I've mixed some colors in the past just by stirring or by using a milk frother because the quantity is too small for a stick blender. But I've realized you really just don't get a silky, velvety, smooth color that way. So my advice is to make enough cocoa butter that you can actually blend it with the stick blender because you'll get such a smooth end result without tiny clumps, and it'll make your life so much easier in the future. I didn't film each color individually because the steps are all the same, so I'm going to just tell you all of my final powder measurements for each color as you watch me mix the holiday green. May as well start with the green since that's what you're looking at. I used the same for green as I did the gold, 7.5%, and that also goes for the red. For the black, I used 10%, and for the white, I used 13%. If you're wondering how I determined how much to use, I started with 7.5% for all of the colors. Once they were mixed, I rubbed the color onto parchment with a glove to see how translucent it was in a thin layer. And then I just kind of decided visually if I felt like it needed more color or not. I used the most for white, which makes sense because you don't want to have to use a ton of cocoa butter to build up the color. So adding more color into the cocoa butter at the start will allow you to use less later on, but get a more opaque coverage. And just a little tip for you, to avoid washing the stick blender between mixing each color by adding water onto it and running the risk of getting moisture into your cocoa butters, I mix my colors from lightest to darkest. Then I just carefully wipe off the blender using a paper towel in between. And remember to always unplug it before ever touching the blade, just to be safe. So I mixed my colors in this order: white, gold, red, green, and then black. That way, if there was any bit of color left on the mixer, it would just get lost in the darker color I mix after it. And here are all of the finished mixed Haute holiday food colors. For today's stamp Bonbons, I'll just be using the white, red, and green. Along with some nice holiday cocoa butters, you'll need some chocolate molds. The ones that fit with Makeat stamps are Chocolate World 2022. Then I'll be using this year's holiday collection, which has a snowflake, a sweater pattern, and the phrases ugly sweater season and Santa baby. You'll also need the stamp handle that you only have to purchase once. And then I'm also using this stamp from last year's holiday collection, which I love so much. It's a little peppermint swirl. For my gold, I'm using my favorite mix of Jenna Cake's Edible Gold Dazzle Dust. And to make this, I use 10% luster to cocoa butter. I'll need a sponge brush about this size to show you the first technique you can use for the stamps, which is where I add the gold cocoa butter onto the stamp and then stamp the pattern into the mold before adding the background color. This technique is pretty straightforward. You get a little bit of cocoa butter onto the sponge brush and then carefully apply it onto the stamp and then down into the mold. To avoid picking up too much cocoa butter on the brush, I like to tip my container to get some up on the edge and then dip my sponge into that. Another tip for success for this technique is that it works better when the cocoa butter thickens a little bit. So after you temper it, stir it a lot to help thicken it and cool it a little. Don't worry about the temperature after that point. Just do your best to keep it the same consistency. What I aim for is the thickness of acrylic paint. This viscosity is thick enough to stamp in a good coat, but not too thick that it leaves too much of a smudgy texture. When the cocoa butter is too runny and thin, it tends to squish more and it doesn't leave as crisp of lines into the mold. And when it's too thick, you can get missing patches of the pattern where the stamp suctions it off. So hopefully those tips help you out. Also, try to only get cocoa butter on the pattern and avoid getting it down into the rest of the stamp, just because sometimes it can squish out and not leave a crisp design behind. And along those same lines, when you stamp into the mold, you're giving a little bit of pressure, but not too much. You want a nice balance to press down just enough that the whole pattern touches the mold, but the silicone isn't squishing too much or the pattern won't be clean. In my kaleidoscope stamp video, I did my gold with just luster dust, which totally works too, and you could do that technique here. But I wanted to try out something different for this video, so that's why I'm using gold cocoa butter instead of just luster dust. The luster dust leaves a much more subtle gold glitter design, and the cocoa butter is way more obvious. Here's a closer look of how to apply the cocoa butter onto the stamp. gently press into the mold, and then I clean off the stamp in between each application. So I stamped just half of 2 different molds in the gold, one for red and one for green. So now I spray a really thin coat of my tempered oat holiday red cocoa butter onto my full mold. This is where the next stamp technique really begins, because my first piece of advice in order to get success is to spray the thinnest coat possible while still getting in enough cocoa butter to get the color you want. And I felt like my coat was a little bit thin, so I added a really quick second coat, just enough to make the red pop. The layer still looks pretty translucent, but it won't stay that way once I back this mold in white cocoa butter. And then the exact same thing with my tempered oat holiday green on the second mold. I did this layer a bit different because I found that the green seemed a little less potent once I started spraying it. So I sprayed all of the edges of the cavities first, then sprayed down into the center, and then again, a quick second coat just straight on. So then for this technique, you'll need a heat gun and a soft sponge brush to clean off the melted cocoa butter. You'll heat up the stamp and carefully press it down into the mold. The reason why having such a thin coat of cocoa butter is so important is that you don't have to hold the stamp down into the mold as long to melt through the layers. The longer you hold the stamp into the mold, the heat spreads in all directions, so the pattern becomes thicker and sometimes less clear. If your coat is thin enough that you can just touch the stamp to it and it melts, that is ideal, because then there isn't much time for the cocoa butter surrounding the pattern to really melt or change. So truly, the thinner the cocoa butter, the better. I'm really finding that using a dark color for the background is the best choice because you can use a super thin coat, but still get a good strong color. If you start with a light color and back with a dark one, you might have a hard time getting the coat thick enough to block out the darker color. And if your first coat is too thick, it'll be hard to do the stamp technique successfully. So I think it's pretty safe to say for the best results, spray a dark color first, then back it in a lighter color. Of course, I'm sure it can be done the other way, but I think this is the best advice. If you wanted to have a darker color pattern and a light background, I'd say use the first technique where you stamp the color in, because dark colors will always block out lighter colors easier. I switched up how I heated up my stamp this time around. I used to hold the heat gun and set the stamp on the counter so that I wouldn't burn my fingers, but I saw other people doing it like this, so I tried it out. Either way works, honestly, but this was kind of nice because I'd heat the stamp up face on until my fingers got a little toasty. Then I'd spin the stamp to heat up the edges. And I was actually able to stamp more than 2 in a row this time. And the other thing I did a bit different is that I wiped out the melted cocoa butter a lot better. So I wiped it out once after I stamped it, and then I went back over it again when I was done with the whole mold, and that seemed to work really good. Another little tip is to try to find sponge brushes that are softer rather than firmer. I have a handful of different brushes I've collected over the years, and I hesitate to use some of them to clean out the mold because I feel like they could mess up the areas that aren't melted because they're a little bit firmer. So a softer sponge is, I think, better. It just needs to get in there and collect the cocoa butter without disturbing the background area. After each stamp or couple cavities of stamps, I clean off the stamp onto a paper towel and then heat it up again before stamping the next cavities. And then once I go in with the sponge brush to clean out the melted cocoa butter, I also clean off the sponge on a paper towel. That way you can really keep using the same sponge. And if you see it's getting buildup of cocoa butter, you can knock it really quick with the heat gun and then clean it off even better onto the paper towel. And look how crisp these peppermint swirls are. I'm so excited. I'm getting better at this technique. I feel like I'm way more consistent this time, and I really think the key is to have that thin and even coat of cocoa butter. Now I use the Haute Holiday White to back both the red and green Bonbon molds. For the stamp out technique, this will now make the stamp designs white, as well as lock in all of the red and green backgrounds by blocking out the darkness of the milk chocolate I'll be using to mold them. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this festive holiday bonbon video and that you learned something new. If you liked the video, please like the video and leave me a comment and let me know which color combinations you liked the best. Did you like the red and green with the gold, or did you like the red and green with the white? Honestly, for me, it depends on the vibe of what you're making the bonbons for. But if I had to choose, I think I would say the white and red and green are my favorite today because they are so crisp and they just look so Christmassy. Don't forget to use code BrittneeK for 10% off if you happen to buy any food colors from Haute. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.